Ever wondered what people actually ate to survive economic collapse? After 2013, Venezuela fell apart fast. Inflation hit 1,000,000%. Shelves emptied overnight. A month's wages couldn't buy a week of food. People lined up before sunrise and still went home with nothing. We're talking families stretching a pot of black beans into 3 days of meals and grinding their own corn by hand just to make a basic arepa. Here are 15 foods that kept people alive when the system completely collapsed. Number 15. Arepas. Let's kick things off with the one food that truly feels like Venezuela itself, the arepa. Not just bread. The routine that makes life feel normal, even when nothing else does. During the crisis, pre-cooked corn flour, brands like Harina PAN, became one of the hardest items to find. The government controlled prices on essential goods, which sounds helpful until you realize stores could not afford to stock shelves at those prices. Whatever arrived disappeared within the hour. Lines formed the moment a supermarket received price-controlled staples, and corn flour was always near the top of that list. So families rebuilt with whatever existed. Newspapers ran arepa recipes using plantains, yuca, and yams. Maria Hidalgo in Caracas pulled an old corn mill from storage, rigged it to a small motor, and started grinding her own cornmeal dough to sell to neighbors. She called it going back in time. When the ingredient that defines your entire daily life disappears, you do not give up the meal. You find another way to make it. Stubbornness, it turns out, is a survival strategy. Number 14. Rice. Next up, rice. Before you call this too obvious, hear me out. Because rice during Venezuela's crisis was not just a side dish. It was basically the whole plan. Rice has anchored Venezuelan cooking for generations, the backbone of Papelón criollo alongside black beans, shredded beef, and fried plantains. During normal times, a proper Venezuelan plate is a beautiful thing. During shortages, the Papelón gets stripped down piece by piece until only the rice remains, and the rice still has to feed everyone. In Alnilis Chirino's home in western Venezuela, the fridge was nearly bare. A kilo of rice, half that of beans, a handful of wilting herbs. 3 teenagers counting on her for the next meal. When money loses value faster than almost anywhere in modern history, you stop shopping for variety and start asking one question. How many more days can this stretch? Rice earns its place because it can be split, rationed, reheated, and turned into something that looks like enough. The name changes depending on the time of day. The job never does. Not glamorous, essential. Number 13. Black beans. Okay, black beans might not sound like a crisis food, but during Venezuela's collapse, Caraotas Negras became something closer to medicine, and here is why. Black beans have been a Venezuelan staple for generations, slow cooked with onion, garlic, and cumin, the dark savory anchor of Papelón criollo. When animal protein gets expensive, families cut it first. Milk becomes scarce. Meat becomes a once-in-a-while event. The diet tilts hard toward carbohydrates, and beans become the closest thing to strength a family can still afford. A 2015 survey across 21 Venezuelan cities found most low-income households already down to 2 meals a day. In Alnilis Chirino's house, lunch was rice and black beans her mother had gifted just in time because the pantry was empty. Her daughter ate so fast she burned her tongue. That is not bad table manners. That is a body that does not trust food will still be there in an hour. Not a side dish. A lifeline. The very next time you pass beans at the grocery store, give them some respect. They have certainly earned it. Number 12. Pasta. Now this one might surprise you. Pasta is not exactly what you picture when you think of Venezuelan cuisine, and yet it showed up on crisis tables across the country for one very simple reason. It is the fastest path to a full stomach when options collapse. Pasta arrived in Venezuela with Italian and Spanish immigrant communities and became a standard weeknight option for working families. During normal times, it gets dressed with sofrito, tomato, and chicken. During the crisis, you dress it with oil if you have oil, salt if you have salt, and maybe something canned if you got lucky that week. The problem is, pasta fills without rebuilding. Nutrition experts noted how families leaned heavily on empty carbohydrates because those were the most reachable foods. Kids showed up to school with headaches and fatigue. Parents put children to bed early to help them sleep through hunger. But pasta kept appearing on the table because a full stomach, even a thin one, buys you another day. And in a crisis, another day is what you are always shopping for. Number 11. Yuca. Okay, this one sounds like it belongs in a survival manual, and during Venezuela's crisis, it kinda did. Yuca, also known as cassava, is one of those roots built specifically for situations like this one. Yuca has been cultivated in Venezuela for thousands of years. Indigenous communities built food systems around it, making cassava flatbread and fermented drinks. It grows in poor soil and drought conditions, and once harvested, it requires no refrigeration. That last part matters enormously when power cuts are constant and fridges sit empty or broken. During the crisis, when flour became scarce and bread was rationed, Yuca stepped in quietly. Boiled until soft, mashed, or sliced thick, it fills the stomach in a way plain bread sometimes cannot. And because it works into dough, it joined the long list of ingredients people used to keep familiar meals alive when corn flour disappeared. You look at that root and ask the same question: can this become something my kids recognize? With Yuca, the answer was almost always yes. Thousands of years of history come in handy. Number 10. Plantains. Here is one that could act like 3 completely different foods depending on what your kitchen had that particular day. And during Venezuela's crisis, that kind of flexibility was worth its weight in gold. The plátano has been part of Venezuelan cooking since the 16th century, introduced from Africa through the slave trade, and woven into nearly every regional cuisine. Tostones, tajadas, plátanos fritos, plantains appear at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. During the crisis, that familiarity became part of their value. If you had oil, you fried them, and the kitchen smelled like something you chose. If you did not have oil, you boiled them, and they still did the job. At a church soup kitchen in Caracas, when Juan Colina finally had enough strength to make it there, the meal that quieted the whole room was an arepa stuffed with ground beef and plantains. The kids ate so fast the chatter stopped. Then they swarmed the counter looking for seconds, bodies trying to store something for later. The side dish that quietly became something completely essential on every table. Number 9. Potatoes. Potatoes. Not the most exciting entry on this list, we will admit that up front. But during Venezuela's crisis, the humble potato punched well above its weight. And here is how. When formal supply chains collapsed, people built informal ones. Neighborhoods lined up for vegetables trucked directly from agricultural regions in Mérida and Táchira, bypassing the broken supermarket system entirely. Direct producer-to-consumer sales became a lifeline for farmers who could not move product through normal channels, and for urban families finding only empty shelves. Potatoes thrived in those informal markets because they are dense, filling, and forgiving. Buy them by the kilo when the price is right. Cook them in plain water when gas is scarce. Slice them thin to make a small amount look bigger. Drop them into soup and suddenly the pot feeds 3 more people. A 2016 survey found most Venezuelan households struggling to access 3 meals a day. In that world, anything that stretches a pot becomes precious. No refrigeration needed, no elaborate seasoning required. Just the quiet work of keeping a family from slipping further. Number 8. Tomatoes and onions. Alright, this one is not a meal on its own, but it is what turns a meal into something a person can actually eat without losing the will to cook again tomorrow. And during Venezuela's crisis, that difference mattered more than you would think. Tomatoes and onions are the foundation of sofrito, the aromatic base that underpins Venezuelan cooking across every region. In better times, you add garlic, peppers, and cilantro and the whole kitchen comes alive. But even stripped down, tomatoes and onion cooked in a little oil transform plain rice into something that actually smells like dinner. They signal that someone cooked, not just survived. During the crisis, fresh vegetables were not guaranteed. Produce arrived on trucks from farming regions, and when those trucks showed up, families lined up fast. In Alnilis Chirino's kitchen, 2 wilting tomatoes and a handful of herbs were the difference between a bowl of plain rice and something warm enough to sit down to as a family. In a crisis, flavor is morale. Do not ever underestimate what 2 tomatoes can do. Number 7, eggs. When meat gets expensive, families cut it first. Then milk. You start looking for protein you can still afford, and eggs slide right into that gap like they were designed for exactly this kind of situation. Venezuela has a long history of egg dishes, a fried egg over Caraotas Negras, scrambled with vegetables, folded into an arepa. Quick, adaptable, always a working family's answer to a fast weeknight dinner. During the crisis, they became one of the few animal proteins an ordinary Tuesday could still afford. Here is what makes eggs genuinely important in crisis logic. When you are spending hours in lines and making multiple small trips to corner stores, you need food that cooks fast. Eggs cook fast. Crack them into whatever you have and call it a meal. 1 egg turns plain rice into breakfast. 2 eggs give dinner a structure that pure starch simply cannot provide. For kids already dealing with headaches and fatigue from months of poor nutrition, that difference is enormous. In this story, an egg is not breakfast food. An egg is oxygen. Number 6, queso blanco. Now here is a food so embedded in Venezuelan culture, it barely registers as special on a normal day. Queso blanco, fresh white cheese, goes on everything. You crumble it over Caraotas, slice it next to an arepa, melt it into tequeños at a party. Everywhere, all the time. Then milk becomes hard to find and you notice its absence immediately. During the crisis, dairy was a controlled staple. Families chased in lines alongside rice and flour. When it appeared, it was rationed. When it did not, parents improvised in painful ways. One young mother, Paula Arceniegas, calmed her 2-year-old with water mixed with cornstarch when milk ran out, trying to get the child to sleep through the morning so she would not have to explain why there was no breakfast. That is the context in which a simple block of white cheese becomes precious. No cooking required, no refrigeration needed. You crumble just a little over an arepa and the meal still feels like the meals you remember. In a crisis, small familiar comforts are what keep you going. Number 5, canned meat, tuna, and sardines. Okay, this one is not glamorous, and we are not going to pretend otherwise. But when electricity is unstable and you cannot trust the fridge, shelf-stable food wins by default, and canned protein became one of the quiet heroes of Venezuela's crisis kitchen. Canned sardines and tuna have a long history in Venezuelan households as affordable everyday proteins, eaten simply with crackers or stirred into rice. During the crisis, their role shifted completely from budget convenience to fundamental safety net. When Alnilis Chirino's family unexpectedly grew by 2 more mouths one evening, an adult daughter and toddler grandson arriving with nowhere else to go, dinner was canned meat warmed over the stove and stretched over rice. More people, same tiny budget, still something to share. These items also appeared in government relief packages when distribution happened at all. Rice, pasta, beans, sardines, canned meat, cooking oil. Deliveries were inconsistent, sometimes weeks apart. But when they arrived, families built entire meal plans around them immediately. A can on the shelf is a plan, and a plan is a luxury worth protecting. Number 4, tripe, buffet, and offcuts. Alright, this is the entry that really tells you how far things had fallen. Juan Gonzalez used to buy nice cuts of beef and give cow lung, bofe, to his dog. Then the crisis deepened and the cow lung became what Juan ate when he could get it. That is not a quirky food story. That is a definition of economic collapse. Offal and organ meats have been part of Venezuelan cooking for centuries, particularly in working-class cuisine. Mondongo soup, made from tripe slow-cooked with vegetables and spices, has been on Venezuelan tables for generations. But when a single kilo of beef could eat a shocking portion of a monthly minimum wage, offcuts became the last affordable entry in the meat category. In butcher markets, tripe and fatty scraps sat in a price range people could still actually reach. Hunger adjusts your priorities fast. You stop arguing with pride and start making soup. Made with patience, tripe stew can actually be quite good. Crisis cooking does not always mean bad food. Sometimes it means forgotten food, remembered by necessity. Number 3, sweetbread rolls. Now this one looks completely normal on the surface. Bread for breakfast. Who does not eat bread in the morning? But hear the details and the picture changes fast. In one Venezuelan home, breakfast was 3 pan de leche rolls dunked into a sugary orange drink, and it was treated like a small luxury. The family typically drank only tap water and almost never ate protein in the morning. Juan considered himself fortunate that day just for waking up without a headache. His brother Jose stayed in bed. That is what crisis nutrition looks like up close. Not just thin meals, headaches, fatigue, and kids missing school because their bodies simply do not have what they need to function. Pan de leche and sweet rolls have been part of Venezuelan bakery culture for generations. Soft, slightly sweet, available at panaderias across the country. During the crisis, when variety disappeared from shelves and lines consumed the day, bread became the routine because it was familiar, fast, and could fill the stomach on whatever small cash remained. Bread is the pause button. Number 2, coffee. Okay, coffee does not feed a family. Everybody knows this. But it does something else during a crisis that turns out to matter a great deal. It tells your brain the day has started. It gives structure to chaos. When people are spending hours in lines and mentally calculating prices that change every week, something hot in your hand can be the thin line between exhaustion and getting through the morning. Venezuela is a coffee-producing country with a tradition of cultivation going back to the 18th century. Venezuelan Café Negro, small, strong, and black, is not just a morning beverage. It is a social ritual. Neighbors share a cup over the fence. Families gather around it before the day's calculations begin. During the crisis, many Venezuelans shopped at corner stores daily, buying small amounts on informal credit because a full grocery trip was financially impossible. Coffee was often part of that purchase. In that credit economy, it earned its place not as a luxury, but as a coping mechanism. Nobody studying crisis behavior should be surprised coffee made this list. Number 1, sugar and Papelón. And last but certainly not least, sugar. The simplest form of emergency energy, and the one that reveals just how deep a shortage can actually go. Papelón, unrefined brown sugar pressed into hard blocks, has been part of Venezuelan food culture since the colonial period. It sweetens guarapo, a drink made simply by dissolving it in water. It flavors Caraotas Negras and shows up in regional desserts across the country. In normal times, it is one of the most basic items in any Venezuelan kitchen. During the crisis, even sugar could vanish from shelves for months at a time. When one of the most fundamental pantry staples disappears that long, you start to understand the full scale of what actually collapsed. And when sugar was available, it did quiet but important work. Juan dunked rolls into a sugary drink, not as a nutritional choice, but to give his body quick energy. In homes where children were down to 2 meals, a spoon of Papelón in hot water was enough to keep a body moving. Not a treat, just a necessity. None of these foods are random. They are the foods that survive when wages collapse, shelves empty, power cuts ruin refrigeration, and parents are doing the math every morning to keep their kids standing long enough to learn, grow, and make it to the next day. Do these foods look different to you now? Leave a comment and tell us which one hit you hardest. And if you want more real stories hiding inside ordinary food, subscribe and stay tuned. There is a lot of history in a bowl of rice.